Before we get into today's game, I want to talk about the sponsors for my channel. Card Conduit is the best way to sell your unused Magic cards. Whether you've got a box of unsorted bulk, or a complete and alphabetized set, there's a great option for everyone. With a payout averaging 19% better than using any one buy list, and that's after fees are applied, you can rest assured you'll get the best bang for your buck. If you're a skeptic like me, their easy customer service and detailed reports make the whole interaction transparent and safe. And if you use the affiliate link in the description below, or the promo code MTGMUDSTA, you'll save 10% off their fees. And 401 Games, Canada's one-stop shop for trading cards, board games, and hobby supplies. Not to mention an easy to use and great online buy list. And if you use the promo code MTGMUDSTA, your first purchase of MTG sealed and singles will be 5% off. And Dragon Shield, the strongest sleeves for your strongest deck. So be sure to use the code MUDSTA or the affiliate link down below to save 5% on your next order. Hey gang, and welcome back. First, a big shout out to Adam for supporting me through Patreon. Thanks Adam for your help. In today's game, we have the original M's back, with Max, Mackenzie, and Mika. Mackenzie is playing his Ria Ivor deck, keeping Swamp, Serra Ascendant, Orzhov Basilica, Priest of Forgotten Gods, D-Spark, Rite of Oblivion, and Minas Tirith. Mika is playing Anje Falkenrath, keeping Ensnaring Bridge, Megrim, Mortuary Mire, Evolving Wilds, Volrath Stronghold, Chandra Ablaze, and a Bloodstained Mire. Maximus is playing his Zur deck, although it's incorrectly marked as Blind Seer, and he keeps Command Tower, 2 Plains, Godless Shrine, Eerie Interlude, Orzhov Signet, and a Path to Exile. And I'm playing Hama Pashar, keeping Jin-Gitaxias, Core Augur, Solemn Simulacrum, Arcane Signet, Plains, Eerie Interlude, Phyrexian Metamorph, and an Island. I win the die roll and start us off. I draw and play an Island. Max plays a tap Godless Shrine. Mika's got an Evolving Wild, cracking it and passing while searching. Mackenzie plays a tap Minas Tirith. I draw, play a Plains, and cast Arcane Signet. Max plays a Command Tower and casts an Orzhov Signet and passes. Mika plays a tapped Mortuary Mire with nothing to put on top, and then casts an Insolent Neonate and passes. Mackenzie draws and pays 1 white for a Serra Ascendant, and then plays Orzhov Basilica, bouncing Minas Tirith back to his hand and passing. I've got a Plains for turn, and tap out for a Solemn Simulacrum, going to find a Plains. Maximus plays a Plains, and then pays 1 of each color to cast Zur. Mika's got a Volrath Stronghold, and is able to cast his commander as well with Anje Falkenrath. Mackenzie draws and plays Priest of Forgotten Gods. He then replays Minas Tirith and passes after that. I play a Plains for turn, and then cast a Phyrexian Metamorph, having it come in as a copy of Solemn. I go to find a basic and pass. Max draws, plays a Plains, and passes. During his end step, Mika activates Anya, discarding Squee and drawing a card. On his upkeep, Mika returns Squee to hand and draws. He then plays a Mountain for turn and casts his own Solemn Simulacrum, going to find a Swamp. Mackenzie draws and plays a Swamp for turn. He plays out Ria Ivor and then goes to combat. He swings the Serra Ascendant at me and puts the Ria Ivor trigger onto it. Max responds by casting Path to Exile, removing the creature and having Mackenzie go and get a land instead. He passes to his end step, and I cast Eerie Interlude, blinking both of my Solemns and then having them come back in, with the Metamorph this time coming in as a copy of Anya. I then activate Anya, discarding a card and drawing a card, and moving to my turn. I draw and activate Anya once more, discarding Jin-Gitaxias to draw a card. I then play a Glacial Fortress and pass to Max. Max draws and plays Halid's Heliod's Generosity. He then passes, while Mika once more loots away Squee, drawing a card. Mika draws and plays a Bloodstained Mire, and then cracks it, losing 1 to find a Swamp. He then casts Megrim, and follows up with Obnixilis the Adversary, and sacrifices the Solemn to the casualty cost. I cast Unsubstantiate in response to the original, and Mika's copy of it though resolves. He then upticks the copy, and we all take 2, and Mika passes. Mackenzie draws and plays a Swamp. He then plays a Sonic Screwdriver, and activates it to make Ria Ivor unblockable. Moving to combat, Mackenzie swings Ria Ivor at me and puts her trigger on herself, and then prevents the damage, making 3 mites instead. With nothing else, he passes. I've got an idyllic beachfront for turn, and then activate Anya to rummage. I then go to combat, swinging Solemn Simulacrum and Ob Nixilis. Mika blocks with his own Anya, and I then pass to Max. Maximus draws and plays Solitary Confinement, and then passes, with Mika activating his commander, discarding Squee, and drawing a card. Mika returns Squee, draws for turn, and then recasts Ob Nixilis, and sacrifices the Insolent Neonate to make a copy of him as well. He then downticks the first Ob Nixilis, and then upticks the next 2, and everyone takes damage from them. Mika then follows up with an Ensnaring Bridge, and passes. Mackenzie draws, and plays an Inkmoth Nexus. He goes to combat, and swings Ria Ivor at the real Ob Nixilis, and the mites go at me. He also activates the Sonic Screwdriver to make Ria Ivor unblockable. He decides to skip Ria Ivor's trigger, and I just take 6 damage and 3 poison, while Ob Nixilis just takes 3. With nothing else, Mackenzie passes. I draw for turn, and then activate my clone Anje Falkenrath to rummage. I then cast a Mind Stone and sacrifice it to draw a card. I play a Plains, and then pass. During my end step, Max animates Solitary Confinement with Zur, and we move to his turn. Max discards Pact of Negation to Solitary Confinement to keep it around, and he goes to combat. He swings Zur at the original Ob Nixilis, and the Confinement at one of the copies. Mika chumps the Confinement with a Devil token, and pings a Mite for 1, and the original Ob Nixilis then dies. With nothing else, Max passes. During his end step, Mika once more rummages. Mika draws, upticks his Ob Nixilis copies, and then casts Faconia, passing after that. Mackenzie's got a Swamp for turn, and then plays Denethor, ruling Steward, and makes Ria Ivor unblockable. Going to combat, he takes out one of the Ob Nixilises with Ria Ivor, and passes back to me. I draw and finally find a card that'll get me the initiative, casting Underseller Sweep. I then go and grab a basic, and play it for turn, and pass to Max. Max discards to the Confinement, and then goes to combat. He swings Zur at me, and the Solitary Confinement goes at the last Ob Nixilis. I cast Path to Exile to maintain the initiative, and Ob Nixilis gets taken out. In his post-combat main phase, Max then recasts Zur, and passes. During his end step, Mika rummages away a Curse of Fool's Wisdom, and casts it with Madness, enchanting it with Mackenzie. Since he gets to untap Anya again, he then activates her again and discards Squee, drawing a card, and then moving to his turn. Mika plays a Bloodfell Caves, gaining 1, and he then overloads Mizium Mortars to wipe away most of the board. In response, I activate my Anja Falkenrath to discard and draw a card, and Mackenzie sacrifices 2 mites to the Priest of the Forgotten Gods to try and make Mika sacrifice a creature. He also then casts Vanishing Verse to exile Curse of Fool's Wisdom. The Mortars then resolve, the board gets wiped, and Mika then passes. Mackenzie draws and recasts Ria Ivor. He then plays Sigil of Valor and passes. I go to the next room of the Undercity, but have no creatures to put counters on, and I just draw for turn. I then play an island and cast Hama Pashar. I then follow up with Obtruse Archaic and pass to Max. Max plays an Evolving Wilds, and then casts Thought Lash. He then passes, and Mika activates Anya, discarding Dark Withering, and pays the Madness cost to destroy Hama Pashar. With the spell targeting my commander, I respond by casting Restoration Angel, blinking Hama. And Mika then gets to untap Anya again, and once more rummages Squee away to draw a card. On Mika's upkeep, like he's been doing since almost turn 2, Mika returns Squee to his hand and draws. He then plays a Swamp, and plays out Turgrid. He then casts Oppression and passes. Mackenzie draws and plays Caves of Koilos. He then puts Sigil of Valor on Ria Ivor and makes her unblockable with the Sonic Screwdriver and goes to combat. He swings out at Mika and puts the Ria Ivor trigger on herself, dealing 0 damage but making 4 mites. With nothing else, he passes. On my upkeep, I move to the Trap Room in the Undercity and get to do the ability again thanks to Hama Pashar, and then activate the Obtruse Archaic to do it a 3rd time. I deal a total of 15 damage to Mika, In my main phase, I then cast Luminate Primordial, which makes me discard a Cloud Blazer under Mika's control because of Turgid, and he gains 2 and draws 2. The Primordial then enters and exiles Turgid and a Might token, with Mika and Mackenzie gaining some life. I then pass turn after that. Max exiles to Thought Lash and then draws for turn. He recasts Zur and discards a card to opposition. After that, he passes, and Mika rummages once more. Mika draws, and then with nothing else, just discards down to hand size and passes. Mackenzie plays a Myriad Landscape which comes in tapped, and he animates an Inkmoth Nexus, and then makes Ria Ivor unblockable and goes to combat. He swings his commander at Mika, and the mites go at me. I block them, and Mackenzie makes 7 new might tokens from Ria Ivor's trigger, and with nothing else, he passes. I draw from the Undercity and then draw for turn. I cast a Displacer Beast and finish the Undercity, and then copy the last trigger with the Obtuse Archaic. I get Agent of Treachery off the first trigger, which as it comes in, steals Megrim. And I then get a Feywild Caretaker off the second one. This has me re-entering the Undercity, going to find 2 basics, and I then resolve my last Undercity trigger. The last trigger gets me Karmic Guide, which as it comes in, reanimates Jin-Gitaxias. Once all that shenanigans is done, I then cast Glasspool Mimic and have it come in as a copy of Agent of Treachery, this time stealing Mika's commander. Mika responds by activating her, discarding from under the floorboards, and casting its Madness cost, putting 7 into the X. This untaps his commander, and he then activates her again, discarding Asylum Visitor, but he can't cast it. He still gets to untap her at least once more, and he activates her once again, discarding Call to the Netherworld, but can't cast that either. He continues his Madness rummaging with Terminal Agony, which he doesn't cast, and then finally ends up with a Mind Slicer. I then finally gain control of Anya, and I move to combat. I swing the Restoration Angel and Luminate Primordial at Mika, and he jumps the Primordial with the Cloud Blazer, taking 3 in the air. After that, I declare I'll move to my end step, but Mackenzie uses Despark before leaving my second main phase to exile Jin-Gitaxias. I then move to my end step, making a Fairy Dragon from the Feywild Caretaker. Max exiles some cards to Thought Lash, and then casts Brave the Sands. He then animates the Thought Lash and goes to combat. He swings it and Zur at Mika, and then passes turn. Mika draws and goes to combat. He swings 7 zombie tokens at Max, who blocks 2 of them and takes the rest. After that, Mika casts Starstorm, putting 7 into the X to wipe the board. This has Max responding by casting Eerie Interlude. Max's creatures then come back, and we move to his end step, and Mika passes. Mackenzie draws and plays Swiftfoot Boots, discarding a Rite of Oblivion to Oppression. He then recasts Ria Ivor, and suits her up with the boots and goes to combat. Mackenzie swings Ria Ivor at me, but with no trigger, and I just take 3 commander damage. He gains the initiative, and goes to find a plains, and then passes. I draw and play an island. I recast Hama Pashar, and then play an Arakroa Sneak, retaking the initiative. This lets me venture further, and I get to scry 2 twice, and I pass after that. Max exiles more cards to Thought Lash and draws. He then animates the Brave the Sands and the Thought Lash once more, and then casts Giver of Ruins. Going to combat, he swings Brave the Sands at Mika, and Zur and the Thought Lash go at me. I block Zur with the Sneak, but the Thought Lash connects, and Max gains the initiative. Max then goes to find a plains, and plays it, and then passes. Mika draws and casts Stormworld, and then plays Angrath the Flame-Chained. He follows up with Liliana the Veil, and upticks her to make everyone discard a card. He then downticks Angrath to take control of Zur. Unfortunately for him, Ensnaring Bridge stops any attacks though, so Mika just sacrifices Zur at his end step, and passes. Mackenzie takes 2 from Stormworld, and draws. He then casts Vraska Betrayal Sting, and zeroes her to proliferate, draw a card, and lose 1. With nothing else, he passes. I take 4 from Stormworld, and then draw. I play a Soul Herder, and then move to my end step, flickering the Sneak, which as it re-enters, moves me further into the initiative, and I goad Ria Ivor. Max takes 4 to Stormworld, and then exiles to Thoughtlash and draws for turn. He casts Capsize with buyback and targets the Ensnaring Bridge, and then swings out at Mika. Mika takes the hit, dropping to 3, and Max passes. Mika goes to his upkeep, and then dies to Stormworld, and we move through the phases to pass to Mackenzie. Mackenzie draws, and plays a Swamp. He downtakes Vraska on the Thoughtlash, and Max responds by giving it protection from black by tapping Giver of Runes. Mackenzie then follows up by casting Skrelv, and he then puts the Swiftfoot Boots onto them. Mackenzie then animates the Inkmoth Nexus, and moves the Boots and Sigil of Valor to the Nexus as well. He also uses Skrelv to give protection from blue onto the Inkmoth Nexus. Mackenzie also makes Ria Ivor unblockable, and he goes to combat. He sends the Nexus at me, and Ria Ivor at Max. I take some poison damage, while Max uses Thoughtlash to prevent Ria Ivor from doing damage. Mackenzie though gains the initiative at least, and he moves to the next room, scrying 2 and passing turn. I draw and play Cathar's Crusade. I then go to combat and swing Hama Pashar at Mackenzie, and the Sneak and Soul Hoarder go at Max. I create 2 attacking soldiers coming at Mackenzie, and the Cathar's Crusades put 2 +1/+1 counters onto my team. Max and Mackenzie then both take the hits, and I regain the initiative, and I then move to my end step and flicker the Sneak. I get the initiative again, and get to finish the Undercity. My first trigger hits Sarah Emissary, which as it comes in, has me naming creatures. The second trigger then hits Elish Norn, and once she's out, I then pass to Max. Max exiles cards to Thoughtlash and then draws. He plays a Swamp for turn and passes. Mackenzie draws, and then once more activates Vraska's ability for 0 to proliferate, draw a card, and lose 1. Unfortunately from the proliferate, I die, and Mackenzie then moves through his turn, equipping the Swiftfoot Boots onto Ria Ivor. Max responds with Capsize, paying the buyback cost, to bounce Ria Ivor back to Mackenzie's hand. Once that's done, Mackenzie then plays Weatherlight Completed, and he follows up by recasting Ria Ivor, and then paying to equip the boots onto her, and then passing. Max exiles to Thoughtlash and draws for turn. He then casts Zur and goes to combat. Max decides to send the Thoughtlash at Vraska, but Mackenzie chumps with Ria Ivor. This has the Weatherlight complete to get a Phrasis counter, and after that, Max passes. Mackenzie makes a skeleton from the Undercity on his upkeep and draws for turn. He downticks Vraska to make Zur into a treasure, and then moves the boots onto the skeleton. Mackenzie then suits it up with a Sigil of Valor, and he goes to combat, swinging the skeleton at Max. Once more, Max uses Thoughtlash to prevent the damage, and exiles his top 4. Mackenzie then passes after that. Max exiles to Thoughtlash and draws. He plays an island for turn and goes to combat. He thinks Thoughtlash at Vraska to finally take her out, and sacrifices Zur to recast her in a second main phase and passes back to Mackenzie. Mackenzie moves through the Undercity to the final room, and he gets a Cityscape Leveler from it, and then draws for turn. He then moves the Swiftfoot Boots and the Sigil to the Leveler, and he moves to combat. Mackenzie swings both of his creatures at Max, destroying Zur and giving Max a Power Stone from the Leveler's on attack trigger. Max then takes the full hit, and Mackenzie passes. Max exiles a card to Thoughtlash and draws. He casts Pact Weapon and discards Tree of Perdition to equip it onto the Thoughtlash. He swings Thoughtlash at Mackenzie and reveals Stifle off the Pact Weapon trigger. And Mackenzie activates the Sonic Screwdriver and attempts to block the Cityscape Leveler. Max stifles the Screwdriver trigger though, and Mackenzie then responds with Ink Shield, fogging the attack and making 5 Inklings. After that, Max passes. Mackenzie goes back into the Undercity, starting at the beginning and going to find a basic and then drawing for turn. He plays a Sublime Archangel and then goes to combat. He swings the Leveler at Max and targets to destroy the Thoughtlash. Max responds to this before exiling 26 cards to prevent the damage, and the Thoughtlash then gets destroyed. With nothing else, Mackenzie passes. Max draws but can't find an answer to Mackenzie's board state and knows when he's beat and concedes the game. Game review time. This game was 1 hour, 52 minutes, and 19 seconds, and it was probably one of the slower, longer games that I've played in the last couple of months. Hama Pashar does make things go a little bit slower, especially when I get 3 of the final room triggers, but there were a decent amount of board wipes going around. I was pretty impressed with the Ria Ivor deck. I wasn't expecting very much since I've seen a few of them on the table, and they never really do very much since people usually deal with the creature that gets the trigger. Mackenzie leaned more into the infect than I saw anyone else do it though, and it was cool that he was able to use Vraska to kill me. I'm surprised I don't see more Anje Falkenrath. I know the new Obnixilis is very good, and there have been a bunch of new Rakdos-based commanders, but she's very powerful, and being able to discard Madness-based cards and cast them for their cost while still getting a card draw seems incredibly strong. I don't know why Blind Seer showed up even though I entered Zur the Eternal Schemer into Max's side of the board, but for whatever reason the software I run did not want to change it. That being said, I think this game was probably the most impressive use that I've ever seen someone use Thought Lash with. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, but it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.